Hey, how are you?
About time to make it happen.
Let's do this.
We're going to talk to all 200 of our followers.
Yeah, but they're going to all share it. Mm-hmm. And then before you know it.
So I have something for you.
All right.
This might be something, might be nothing. So you know this old adage that humans are these emotional creatures and we're highly illogical. And there's been study after study after study that has proven that humans make decisions based on emotion far more often, if not every time, compared to, say, a rational, logical decision. Consumer brands have figured this out a long time ago, and they appeal to emotion with all of their campaigns. So my question is, why are businesses in the B2B space, or just business or corporations in general, why are they so averse to human emotion or being human? Why does it have to be this corporate, jargon crap? Corporate beige, as I like to call it.
Yeah. I know. It feels like we spend most of our time trying to figure that out and convince. I mean, that's really the essence of our work, is trying to figure out what is the emotion they need to tap into, and also before after we figure that out, convincing them that it's okay to do it, because they are. It's something that beyond an apprehension to do it. It's a fear of it. If we get this wrong, our world might fall apart.
Yeah,
almost.
Or it's just this mentality that. I mean, I can hear it now. The mentality is just like, emotion has no place in business. It's all about the specs. It's like, I need to know the return on investment. I need to know the ROI. I got to make shareholders happy. There's no room for emotion in there. I hear that. I actually do understand that, right? That businesses are here to make money, not to make you feel good. Be great if they can make you feel good at the same time and make money. Novel concept. But I would posit that Steve Jobs famously called it the notion of when you tout your product with all the specs, like, oh, we've got this much RAM, or our platforms, processes things this much faster and can save you 3 times the amount of time, and all that. All that is what Steve Jobs called speeds and feeds, right? It was this notion of like, we're not going to do. Everybody's got speeds and feeds that they can tout, and to me, my opinion on that is that's pretty much the table stakes. So like the example that I like. Can give right off the top of my head is, as an agency owner, I was shopping software for our agency. And I had certain requirements that I needed that software to do to help us with project management. And so everyone's speeds and feeds were the table stakes. Like they had to meet those requirements to get it narrowed down to the 4 or 5 options that I was considering. And then once you're there, I don't give a crap anymore about the speeds and feeds. I want to know what that software is going to do to make me feel better, either through it's going to be delightful to use, or their marketing material just gets me and just makes me feel like I'm connected to them somehow. It's going to be an emotional push that makes me want to choose that one over 4 equal competitors. So what's the deal? Why are they so freaking scared of that?
Yeah, I don't know. If we can figure that out and bottle it and sell it, we could retire probably in a couple of months. I like your other story that you tell sometimes about the advent of the iPod.
Yeah, again,
not to go back to the Steve Jobs world, but it's so rich and he was so.
It's so easy because he was so good at this. Now I know that Apple's clearly B2C, right? And we're talking about consumers, right. And so like appealing to consumers' emotions is like the key. Everybody knows that,
right?
But it still applies to business. But his famous thing was when the iPod came out in 2001, they were not the first MP3 player. There was the Diamond Rio, and I think even Sony may have had it. There was other players on the market, and you were already dealing with a situation where consumers didn't know what an MP3 was. Remember, that was new. People still use the CDs, and
I still don't know what MP3
stands right. For. And so all these other MP3 players were touting 250 megabytes of memory and a 3 megabyte buffer so that you can put in high quality AAC encoded, blah, 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 blah. And that's all. And so it's like the regular folks are like, okay, cool. And then, Steve Jobs drops the iPod and the marketing statement was 1,000 songs in your pocket. That's all the consumer needed to hear. And it's like, not only did it describe how much capacity it had, but it also described its function. It also described how it will make you feel, like how powerful that would be to have 1,000 songs in your pocket.
How's it going to make your life better?
Right. And so again, I know that's B2C, but that same thing applies to B2B. We've talked about this 1,000 times over internally. So everybody talks about B2B as this whole separate class, of marketing and advertising and branding and all of that. And yeah, there's differences between B2B and B2C in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, we call it, every business is human to human. Everybody who's making a decision at an organization, at a company, is a human being, and they are going to make some decision based on some emotional connection that they have to a brand. It could just be that the sales guy had a super cool suit on and was just super nice, and I feel better. I feel really good about that guy. Or in my case, the software, it was like they had these tiny little Easter eggs in the software, and you click a button and like a unicorn would fly across the screen every now and then randomly. That's fun. It's like these little human touches. And I think the problem is it's really hard to measure brand advertising as opposed to where we are today, which is bottom of the funnel performance marketing. They want to see clicks, they want to see immediate ROI, and they want to see, the form fills, all of that. And the hardest part about focusing on brand and human connection is that it's a long play. I think that's probably what it is. But at the same time, I also think there's this other thread of we're business people. We have to be really, buttoned up.
Yeah, I think that, if I've picked up on any kind of a theme or a consistent thread with those types of clients and those types of decision makers, mm-hmm. I feel like they are so focused on that their path to a sale is through trust. Right. That makes sense.
Right.
But they think their path to trust is to vomit all of their technical specs all over people.
Right.
We've got expertise and our thing does this and look at this great thing it does. And to your point, of course it has to do all those things.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. We get that. But, to your point, is it easy to use? Is this something that if I implement this in my organization, the people that have to use it are going to enjoy using it, or are they going to resist it more because it is a pain in the what?
Yeah.
And those things get lost. Is dealing with your company going to be a joy, or is it going to be a pain?
Yeah.
All of those things take a back seat for the B2B folks that I think struggle.
Yeah.
And that their marketing leaves a lot to be desired and doesn't really move the dial. And I think that that's just a common theme that we deal with all the time, is trying to move the conversation away from that to a conversation about brand, because it is. Robots are selling to humans at this point. Thanks a lot for that, Google. But robots are not yet selling to other robots.
Yeah.
So we still need that human voice and that human connection. That comes through brand, not through click-through rate.
Yeah. If ultimately the decision is being made by a human being, it's going to have to be by brand, through brand affinity. And the only way, not the only way, the best way is to make some sort of personal connection. I could even say too that corporations, if you go back, and I'm no historian, but you could historically go back and watch companies and turn into corporations, and then the rise of the mega corporation, like in the 40s, 50s, and 60s and all that. It was very, buttoned up, well-oiled machine, and it was very formal, and some of it is something to behold, the IBM of the day, or Kodak, all these mega corporations that were doing incredible things, operating incredibly efficiently, and it was probably because it was by the book, by the numbers, by all the things.
Yeah.
I just think in today's world, we are so as a society becoming more relaxed anyway, so business as usual is a little bit more relaxed than it used to be, especially since COVID. You've got people choosing where they want to live instead of having to live where they have to live. They're choosing where they want to live so that they can have this healthy work-life balance. They can enjoy what they're doing outside of work. All of this centers around being more comfortable as humans and being more relaxed as humans, right? And so that just keeps tinkering in the back of my brain that like we as a society are so desperate to get out of the corporate, drudgery. So why can't we? Why can't we let corporations let down their guard just a little bit so that, because you could even go back and say, well, what about so-and-so corporation? They're making trillions of dollars. That's great. But if they're also pissing people off or they're making zero connection to anyone when they screw up or something goes wrong, they have no goodwill. Like, what if you were making trillions of dollars and everyone loved you?
Right.
Because of, how you as an organization.
I think that's the key is that you can do both.
Right.
And you need to do both.
Right.
And I mean, how many times have we met with a client on the front end, one of our initial meetings with a new client. And one of the questions that we ask everybody is what's worked for you in the past? Yeah. What hasn't worked? What has? And how many, like if you could put a percentage on it, how many out of 10 say, to be honest, the thing that works the best is word of mouth? Yeah.
I'd say pretty close to 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's brand.
Yeah. Brand does that.
Brand does that.
Yeah.
And I don't know why the discussion is so hard with the B2B clients especially, but I think it's because they are so hyper-focused on measurement. And to your point, you can measure clicks. You can measure how a digital ad performs in terms of how many people see it, how many people click on it. And then once they get to your site, you can measure everything they do on your site. And all that stuff feels a little bit intoxicating when you first start to look at it. And I'm not meaning to say it has no value.
Right.
It does.
It does. Yeah.
It does, for sure. But the thing that I think we run into all the time is people want to see, they'll ask us all the time, well, what are the metrics to prove that brand marketing works compared to performance marketing?
Here's the really hard part about that is
especially the B2B clients get hyper-fixated on it.
Well, because for the same reason, like every quarter they need to show that they're returning on that investment, right? Now, that's the trickiest part because you absolutely can measure it. It is absolutely measurable, but it's through a series of different things, right? It's like, and I don't have, I've got all kinds of notes on this. I actually sat in on a talk with one of the global directors of advertising for United Airlines. Gave a whole talk on this and how they focus on brand advertising. And
do they spend any money on advertising?
They spend a little bit of money on advertising. And they spend a little bit of money on brand advertising. That was literally the tactic that they said that they were going for, was to move away from the performance marketing. Not completely away from it, clearly.
Right.
Like they're selling flights. They got to get, they're doing all that.
Special deal to Houston today.
Right. Yeah, they're doing tons of that. But they made a conscious effort. They're now the world's largest airline. So they made a conscious decision that we can't be just the world's largest airline. We want to be the world's largest and the best. And you become the best by building an affinity and, a relationship with your customers. And so they are putting tons of money into brand advertising. And all the brand advertising might be is like the United logo and their current mission statement, which is good leads the way. And that might be all you see. And they might spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a placement for that, and that's it. But they can prove that it's moving the needle. I don't have the data here. I wasn't allowed to share what was shared with us, but like the level of brand retention was through the roof. You can measure the return on this.
People are going to think that we're making this up right now. We're not. Yeah. We're not making this up.
Yeah.
All right. It's so odd that you tell the United story because so my wife, very intelligent woman, love her dearly. I've been doing this kind of work for a long time, ever since I've known her in one form or another. She still doesn't really get what I do. Yeah. And that's fine. But last week, speaking of United and speaking of Houston, she was in Houston for a work conference, a work thing. And she texted me out of the clear blue. I didn't set up. I haven't talked to her about this. I didn't talk to her about your meeting because you were actually your talk that you were in with the United executive was around the same time. And she sent me, unprompted, a picture from the Houston airport of a new piece of United marketing brand poster.
Yeah.
And it had that new message on there.
Good leads the way.
Good leads the way. And it was a picture of a woman pilot on the tarmac. It was kind of it harkens back to the old days when actually you would walk on the tarmac to get on a plane. So, of course, my literal brain, which drives her crazy, immediately goes to, why is there a pilot on the tarmac walking to her plane like this is 1955?
Yeah.
But whatever. I'll get past that.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of copy on it about how, some personal notes about this. She does this and she does that when she's not flying.
Right.
And it was a very positive message about who this person is and why you ought to trust them and why you ought to, like United Airlines.
Yeah.
And she said, and she sent me the picture, said, I love this kind of marketing. And I said, okay, why?
Yeah.
And she said, because it makes me feel like the people that work for United are good and nice people and they're going to treat me nice and therefore I ought to treat them nice in return.
Right.
I was like, wow, you got all that from that piece of brand marketing. It wasn't click now to book your flight.
It probably wasn't,
visit our website. It was none of that. It was a pure piece of traditional brand marketing that resonated with my wife.
Frankie thinks so.
That's a sign. I just blew Frankie away.
You just blew Frankie's mind. And but to me, this is such a great, perfect example. I actually didn't know that happened because I wish I could have known that so I could have relayed that because again she didn't know we had this conversation, but it stuck out in her mind like again, United could come out of the gate. No airport pun intended there.
That was incredible.
They could come out of the gate and say, we are the world's largest airline with 30,000 flights daily from so-and-so. They can say all that.
More flights to London Heathrow than anybody.
They can say that, and they probably are saying that in certain places. But what they're doing with this sort of brand advertisement is they're saying, not only we're the world's largest airline, but we're full of people who are putting your life ahead of our own to make sure that you're safe and comfortable. And that's who we are as an organization, or that's what we want to be as an organization. And that means something to people. Maybe not to everybody. It certainly meant something to your wife. It means something to me.
Right.
Now, granted, I'm in the space, but at the same time, I'm looking for that.
Yeah.
I'm looking for some reason to like this corporation over the other. There's so many headlines over and over again in today's world about just mistrust, period, in corporations and businesses putting profits over everything else. Hello, Boeing.
Right.
And so I don't know how we got stuck in airlines, but, Boeing lost all their goodwill. They got caught putting profits over safety time and time again. And, they have no goodwill left.
Right.
And if they hadn't built the goodwill that they had over the past of being an American gem of a company, that brand awareness is what allowed them to somewhat get through where they are. But boy, they got some work to do to get out of it. But that was all brand for them. So, and I kind of go back to this thing of, so again, we can't change. We're not going to convince the whole world to do this, right? Wouldn't it be lovely if we could? But my whole plea to the world is like, no one wakes up and is like, I really hope I get targeted by a SaaS platform campaign today. I just want to, I want to be inspired by a SaaS platform. So my whole I would say to the world that like no one is asking for your marketing content. No one's asking for your brand to be shoved in their face. So if we as organizations are going to put material out there, can we at least make it beautiful? Can we at least make it emotional? A way to connect? Can it be fun and engaging? Like, Jesus Christ, is it that hard to just put a little bit behind it? Study after study after study after study shows that high quality creative, well thought out, campaigns that engage are bringing an astonishing return.
Yeah.
I've got all the numbers written down from those talk sessions that I was at. And I mean, we're talking like the one that stands out is like, I think Ogilvy Research had a study, behavioral sciences study, that 95% of people make decisions based on emotional pathways, not rational ones. Okay, so there's one.
Are you calling me irrational?
Yeah, for an irrational person, you're very rational sometimes.
Yeah.
So
I will make some irrational buying decisions.
can we for no reason whatsoever? Like I'm feeling away, so I'm gonna do this instead.
I just like the way that car looks.
Yeah. So
And that's why I'm going to buy that one instead of the other one that might be better.
So I'm curious. You used to work at the city of Spartanburg.
I did.
City government seems pretty freaking boring. What's your take? I mean, like, why were you not afraid to do the things that you did at the city?
That's a good question. I think partly because I came into this type of work, marketing PR, from journalism.
Mm-hmm.
And in journalism, we're writing about complex stuff a lot, but you're constantly in the back of your mind, everything is about the reader, the reader, the reader.
Right.
You're not, and there's this like spirit in journalism, and I got to be careful how far I go here because there's so many opinions about journalism today. But there is a spirit in journalism, and I think it's essential that you are there to hold powerful people to account.
Mm-hmm.
And powerful people don't like that.
No.
But someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
And so I still believe that when journalism is done properly and well,
Mm-hmm.
it's not written for the people who are the subject of the stories.
Yeah.
You're not doing it for them. This story about this business leader is not for the business leader, and I don't care if you like it or not.
Right.
But we're going to write the truth,
Yeah.
and it's for the people so they can be more knowledgeable, intelligent, comfortable, whatever, about the world they live in so that they can make better decisions as they go about their lives.
Right.
That's the whole point
point.
of it.
Yeah.
And so when I moved into strategic communication work, I kind of had that muscle already built that like we're not doing this to appease city council
Right.
or the mayor
Right.
or even the city manager.
Yeah.
Or even the police chief,
It's almost-
or anyone in this building. This is not for them. And so we're going to do things that probably make them a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I hope we are, because the messages and the information that we're pushing out is for the citizens of the city.
Novel concept, right? That the government is there to,
Yes.
Yeah.
We want the citizens to be informed about what's going on. And so therefore we need to give them the information in ways that they want to engage with it.
Right.
And something that's a little bit more interesting, that's written in a way that's more accessible, that's delivered on platforms that they actually use, that isn't filled with a bunch of jargon and acronyms and the typical government bureaucratic speak.
Yeah.
If you want them to be interested and give a damn about any of this stuff, you need to communicate in a way that humans communicate with each other. And so I think that's why.
Yeah.
And I think that it does make people nervous, and it continues to make the times when I personally, and I think when Slant maybe doesn't mesh with a potential client is when
we're trying to take them to a place where their audience but
and
they're
they
not
are so insular and they're so worried about. They think that the marketing is for themselves. They want marketing that makes them feel comfortable rather than that engages their target audience.
I'll play devil's advocate. I'll go so far as to say that I don't truly think I don't think they think it's for them. They know it's ultimately for their audience, but they have a hard time separating themselves from their audience.
Yeah.
You see
That's probably a better way of saying it.
But here, let me go back to the city for a second. So the big question is, did it work? All the brand, because before Slant came along and partnered with the city of Spartanburg was just where you lived, right? We knew, there's a city hall, there's stuff going on. You single-handedly, I feel like, started the whole momentum of like, no, this is the city of Spartanburg at work. This is the city of Spartanburg doing that. This is the city doing that. This is the city doing that. You weren't really saying anything other than this is the city doing all this stuff. So did it work?
I think so. I mean, and the city's in a far different place. The city of Spartanburg is in a far different place today than it was back in 2012 and 13 when we were working on all that. I think what we did, we used to talk a lot about, the difference between the capital C city and the lowercase c city. So the capital C city was City Hall,
right?
City government,
right?
What are they doing?
Yeah.
But we felt really important, and we felt it was really important, and we were passionate about the idea that we also need to talk about the lowercase c city,
Right.
the people of the city,
Yeah.
the what's going on, and talk about there are things happening here that City Hall doesn't have a hand in,
Right.
or maybe it does, but it's behind the scenes. But we need to share those stories too, to get people interested in what's happening here, because our overall philosophy was, we're going to act like we are just like the marketing, the marketing and communications department for a B2C.
Right. Yeah.
That our job here is to get more customers, and we define more customers as more people that are choosing to live there, open a business there, or come visit there.
I think that's cool. I think that's incredibly smart.
We need to talk to them,
Yeah.
in a way that makes them want to do those things, or at least check it out.
Yeah, and keep their attention.
And I think that we did that, and then they've, since I left, almost 8 years ago, they've gone up another 2 or 3 or 10 notches even.
So if there's all these examples, the data from all these reports that I can share, and your own lived experience of working for the city, and countless other brands who have talked about brand advertising, building emotional connections in the B2B space at work. How many times would you say that we run into this problem where we're trying to shift the way a business markets themselves to their audience, to your point, which is speaking to their audience, and they just dig the heels in?
Yeah.
And I would argue that happens probably 70% of the time.
I would agree. I mean, I think that's the whole crux of what we do,
right,
to a large extent.
Yeah.
And I think that we do run into resistance. And I think our job is sometimes to not necessarily let the perfect be the enemy of the good, to borrow that expression. We're not going to necessarily get certain types of clients to go all the way, but if we can at least move them a little bit down that path,
that's all we're trying to do.
That's a win.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Where we, I think, need to figure out a better way of maybe making the case for it is when we run into the, well, how long is this going to take to work?
Yeah,
question.
There's the tricky part.
And how can you prove that this works? Because this other stuff over here, I can see the clicks, and I can see engagement numbers, and I can see all that. And I don't know. I was thinking about this the other day. I wonder if we ought to just start telling people, where's the proof that brand marketing works? The history of capitalism and advertising.
I mean,
the whole
there was all this happening long before digital advertising and all that.
Correct. It was all brand.
It was all brand marketing. That's a very valid point.
I mean, have companies been selling more stuff as a result of advertising?
That seems to be the general consensus. Yeah.
Yeah. They have been.
Brands came along for a reason. The how long will it take is a very common question, especially in today's age of go, results, immediate results. The whole thing about your brand is that it is you don't stop. It's something you start now and you keep.
It's a continual investment.
Now, all right. So, and I can already hear arguments in my head like, enough. We can't be touchy feely in business. We've got to get shit done. And I get it, but I just feel like you can do both.
Yes.
Small example
for sure.
Slant as a small example because we are small. But I mean, when we first started out 20 years ago, 21 years ago. Yeah, geez. 21 years ago, I'm in my early 20s, and when the company's fresh, and so we don't have a ton of backlog of portfolio work to prove our work, to just showing the work. How do we make businesses comfortable spending thousands of dollars with this new company that doesn't have a huge portfolio just yet?
Yeah.
How do we prove that we are absolute professionals and can do a hella good job? Well, it was in our presentation of self. So since day one, Slant has always had this very corporate, very clean forward-facing brand presentation, meaning our documents are meticulously designed and organized. Our invoices are meticulously, line itemed out, and project reports, everything's data, blah, blah, blah. And like, we've got it all. So like a client can say, I need details on why we spent this much time on a thing. Boom, report in your hand. Like our website was, clean and professional and minimal. But then we would drop. And so that was our proof that we are an organized, professional business that can do the work, and we're not just a fly-by-night kind of thing.
We've got our act together.
But we're also creatives, and we also are like, as if you couldn't tell, like vehemently against corporate beige, and like we just want to feel things and have fun and all that.
Yeah.
So how do you do both? Well, if you start to study our materials a little bit, you'll start to see Easter eggs. So like you're on our website and it's professional, and then you might see something like, I think in our contracts, for example, on the last page of our contract, you got like 3 pages of legalese, right? It's all the excessive bullshit that lawyers make you put in there. And
yeah.
Down at the very bottom of that, it says in ultra fine print. We don't put anything in fine print except for random sentences like this.
Yeah.
We've been doing that for 21 years, and 3 people have commented on it. No one else has noticed it, but when the people who saw it, it was like that, didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
And again, so we're dropping pellets of personality, and that proves that we are doing what, that we're business people. But once they're inside, we can have fun. Like you can absolutely do both. And then once you have built that established trust, then you can start to really show some more personality. So now some of our public facing materials are really fun and funny and snarky and whatever, but our brand presentation is still very clean, very corporate, very professional, very buttoned up.
Yeah.
I just feel like you can do both.
Yeah. And I think that, but I also can see how that can feel to a small business or to a smaller nonprofit, that even if you agree with all that, how do we get there? And that can feel overwhelming.
Right. Yeah, I get that.
And so, and so, golly, now we have to invest in that to get there. Like, but that's why you hire a professional.
That's why.
But that's the other big challenge is, just having shifting the conversation from one about price to one about value.
Right. That's the key.
And that's really hard. And that's what all businesses have to do.
And I'll still say that you can measure it. And if you're just locked in on the data and that's all you care about, okay, well, are you making more money this year than you did last year? Okay, that's an indicator.
Right.
Is your sentiment analysis, like there's tools out there, especially with AI, that you can run and scan the web and find out what people are saying about you. What is the sentiment analysis? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it better than it was the last year? Is your social engagement higher? Or is organic search up? All of those things together.
Last time you had an opening, was the quantity and quality of the applicants higher?
Right. All of that plays into your brand, to being able to measure if your brand is performing well, and that your investment into brand advertising and is working. And so the problem is that you can't pick any one of those and directly tie it.
Right.
But it all correlates together. It absolutely does.
Right.
Now, having said all of this, I have to give you a fun example to think about, because as with all things, you can do it totally wrong too. So we're talking about, don't you wish brands were just better at being people, connecting with us and all this? I have a great example of how somebody tried to do that, and I just feel like they just failed so hard.
Are you about to make fun of somebody?
I'm about to make fun of somebody. I don't do this very often. However, Batteries Plus.
Oh, yeah.
You remember Batteries?
I remember Batteries Plus. Are they still around?
They're still around.
All right.
Actually, and they don't just sell batteries, and they sell bulbs too. So it's Batteries Plus bulbs.
Batteries Plus bulbs plus?
Batteries Plus bulbs plus something. Anyway.
2 pluses?
Yeah, something like that. So they ran a campaign a while back. This was,
Wait, go back. So batteries plus
was the name.
would seem to indicate that there's other things than batteries that they sell.
Right. But then
But if that wasn't clear enough,
they added the extra things that they sell, bulbs.
and they still have plus at the end?
No, it's just batteries plus bulbs.
It's just batteries plus bulbs now.
Which means now
there's nothing else.
So there's nothing else. So if they decide to add anything else, they're going to have to add a couple more pluses, I guess. So batteries plus bulbs plus paper products. I don't know. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic.
Yep.
But let me tell you about this campaign that they did. It was almost as if they got the memo that, hey, people really resonate with emotion. We need to tug at some heartstrings. And they were like, got it. We're going to make a commercial. And the commercial...
Emotion is good.
And they made a commercial, and I'll have to find it and maybe put a link in the show notes or something. But the commercial was like this really well-produced, and it was like, a fireman, charging into a house at night, with a flashlight that was super bright and searching for a loved one.
Looking for a baby
in a right. And then it cuts to another one where it's like, a dad working on their car and the son is holding, the lantern or whatever. And it was like these really intense emotional moments. And it was like, we power your life. And after the commercial was over, I just sat there and I was like, God damn, that is awful. I was like, because, Jesus, it's batteries plus bulbs. I was like, you don't power my life. I don't ever think about batteries plus until I need a battery. Now, to me, that was just a horrible misstep. They were trying to place themselves squarely in the center of saving lives and all that.
Yeah.
Does their product help firefighters and, cave divers and all that? Yeah, absolutely. Does it make sure do they sell batteries that helps your car start so you can get home to your family? Absolutely. Should they have done a message like that? I just don't think so. They should have been more like, we help the people who help you,
something.
It's just something that really made me connect with them. It was just such an overreach.
Yes.
And I just feel like it was bad.
It was like, not to make fun of younger people. I'm a father. I raised two younger people and I love them dearly, but that feels like, a high school marketing class answer to a problem.
Yeah. Feels like somebody's first jump into, they got the creative brief and
Yeah. We need to do something emotional. Okay.
So what do batteries do? Well, they power, policemen, and take, blah, blah, blah. To me, that is, you can be just as tone deaf on the opposite side of this as you can be on not being emotional at all.
Right.
So again, it's a very fine balance.
No, yeah, there's shades of gray in there. There's a lot of nuance in there. You have to, use some creative intelligence to get there.
One of my favorite terms is what we do well. So then I have to ask back, give me an example. What's Mr. Lord Business just walked in and he's like, so I hear I'm supposed to be emotional now. How am I supposed to do that? What are you going to tell Lord Business and how to be Mr. Business?
Well, Lord Business. I don't know. I think the way we do it is we don't tell them that in that meeting. We don't have answers. We ask a ton of questions.
Yeah.
It's like one of the other things that we've talked about before is I'm so tired of companies and people talking about, oh, they're so smart. They're smart. Ooh, that person's smart. A lot of smart people. Everybody's smart, but not everybody is curious.
Yeah.
And I think the way to talk to Lord Business who comes to you and maybe is starting to get some religion about we need to do a better job of connecting and engaging with people is to start that conversation by asking him a lot of questions. And for me, it usually starts with, why do you do what you do?
Yeah.
And he's going to give you some, if he's really Lord Businessy, he's going to give you some really boring.
We see a gap in the industry and looking to fill that gap of a $42 billion industry, and we just want 1% of that slice so that we can return value to our stakeholders.
Right. And then that's when you say, okay, but why do you care about that?
Right. And I would argue if you really dive down deep enough, my argument is that I feel like people do what they do for maybe I can only think of two reasons. One is they are genuinely passionate about what they do, and they just love the work. Now, Lord Business may not give a crap about the company he's a CEO of. He may not care that much about the product, but what he truly cares about is bringing dollar value to that company. So like he truly loves what he's doing, right?
He loves problem solving in some form
He loves
or fashion.
it, right? And he's good at it.
Yeah.
The other reason somebody might do a job is because they just need the job, but to support themselves and to make enough money to support their loved ones, so that they can go home at the end of the day and be with their loved ones and maybe be proud about something that they did during the day. Which of those two things is not emotional?
Right.
If you're passionate about your work, or you're doing it because you want to be with the people that you love,
Or you're just looking to survive.
those are all very emotional things. So again, we'll go back to the question we started at the beginning. Like, why are businesses so afraid of this? Everybody that works in a business is emotional, has a human element to everything they do.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I don't know, but we got to keep banging away at it until we figure it out. And some people, I don't know. And maybe that's. Have you thought about that? That maybe that's where we lose them, is just by using the word emotional.
probably.
Like, I think there's some people that you say emotional and they immediately, that conjures up for them
Ooh, you're probably right.
super, like that just makes them uncomfortable, because for them, their definition of emotional is
Irrational.
It's negative. There's a negative connotation to emotional, that you're weepy or you're unpredictable or you're not stable.
Yeah.
And so maybe we need to just ditch the emotional.
The term emotional. You're probably absolutely right. Case in point, my wife thinks I am emotionally vacant, right? That like that I don't show emotion at all. Turns out I'm highly emotional, but I think what you're right is like what she means is like I don't want to, she's like we're schmoopy, like I'm not going to do any of that.
Yeah, right.
Maybe hold a hand or two,
Right.
But what I mean when I'm talking about
You're not going to baby talk with your.
No,
you don't do that.
We don't schmoopy. Not going to schmoopy. But you're absolutely right, which is when I use the term emotional, it's passion, very passionate, and passion again doesn't have to mean anything like romance or anything like that. It's passionate just means you feel a way about stuff. Like you get excited about something, or you get mad about something, or you have big feelings about something, or hard opinions. Like all of that is emotion, the human element.
Yeah, you're getting past the kind of the you're getting past the logic, and you're tapping into something deeper, that forms a connection with someone else.
So what's the word?
That then builds interest, that then hopefully builds trust, that then hopefully builds loyalty.
Yeah.
All those are emotions too.
Those are all emotions. And again, the logic is what got you to the short list. But me as a company, I made it to the short list of being chosen because of the logic decision tree. Was like, I need this and I need this and I need that, and it's got to be compatible with this. And so, cool, you meet all that. So now you're here. So,
yeah, I mean, I keep going back to the car thing. Because I think the logic part, because I think people can confuse that too, and they think, so I do need to hit them with all the specs up front,
right?
No, because a lot of times it's understood,
right?
Like
table stakes.
I keep going back to the car thing. Yeah. I know that I need in a car certain things to function.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
It needs to have brakes and four wheels and steering, and I'm not a car guy, so whatever. I'd like to have a freaking air conditioner. I'd like to be able to, listen to music in there, all that stuff. Seats would be great. But I've already done all that. Like, I don't need you to hit me with that. I'm going to do a tiny bit of research, and then I'm going to get on the lot, and inevitably I'm going to say, I don't like the way that car looks. I do like the way that one looks. Yeah, but I thought you said you wanted X, Y, and Z. I did. But I like the way that one looks.
That one. Yeah.
So maybe that makes me flaky.
But again,
probably just makes me human.
But this goes back to something, if it wasn't clear, of kind of what we've been hashing out, I guess, which is you need both.
Yes.
We're not saying you have to abandon one for the other.
Correct.
You absolutely need
both.
Make
a great product.
Make a great product.
But then also make it
mean something.
Make it mean something. Make it beautiful.
Right.
Make it something that people want.
Yeah.
to have in their life and not just because they have to.
Right. And make sure there's enough room to put your sunglasses. I'm giggling because my sister's in the market for a new car.
Okay.
And she pops in.
What's driving the decision?
Her car's old.
No, but I mean, what's the number one thing she wants?
So, well, this is what I'm getting at. So she drives a Lexus SUV now. It's an old one, getting up there in mileage and starting to have a lot of problems. So naturally, she and her husband go and they go to the Lexus dealership, and she hops in another Lexus, basically the newer version of what she's got.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't want it. And he was like, well, don't you want to, the salesman was like, don't you want to take it on a test drive? And she's like, no.
She didn't even drive it?
She didn't even drive it. And he was like, why don't you want it? She was like, there's nowhere for me to put my sunglasses. So that's it. She's done with Lexus. She's moved on to, I think, a Hyundai at this point. She's looking at the Hyundai Palisade. Boy, there's all kinds of places to put sunglasses in there. Did Lexus check all the boxes of speeds and feeds for her? Yeah, and then some. But they left off one checkbox that they probably never even thought about.
So I don't know how it fits into our overall.
Yeah, I don't think it does.